Good afternoon. Sound check. One, two. Sound check. Thank you. May I request everyone to please enter now the room where we are going to start our or continue our orientation. A webinar, I mean. Hello?
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, good
Afternoon.
afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. Calling the attention of the class mayors to please inform your classmates that we are now to resume the webinar. Again, the attention of all the class mayors to please inform your classmates that we are now about to resume our webinar. So for the Action Research Proper, second chapter. Let us hear out our third speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Michael C. More Jr., LPT.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So let me share my screen first. Okay, so we are now in chapter 2, the methodology. So we will be just discussing to you the essential parts of the methodology, especially the research designs. So that would be for the qualitative and quantitative research designs, because for the mixed method, mm, it was already discussed by Sir Pedro. Those are the convergent parallel, the explora, explana, embedded, and other designs for mixed method. So now let's start. Okay, for methodology, we have here the first and essential part would be the research design. So for quantitative and qualitative study, the research design have the same concept but have different types. So for example, um, for the quantitative study, we have this experimental, comparative, correlational, and for the qualitative research design, we have the phenomenology, case studies, ethnography, and other stuff. So the research design, okay, okay na? Hello? Madunggan or Madunggan or di?
Okay, sir.
Ah,
Madunggan, sir.
tama ba yung tingog kalit natin? Sige, let us continue. Okay, for the research design, both for quantitative and qualitative study, it's relatively simple. It comprises two or five sentences paragraph indicating the type of research study you are going to do. So those itong examples na akong mentioned kanina. And for this part, you will justify why you choose this type of research design. It is good to refer to research guides, traditions, or experts for your type of study. This helps your reader place your methodology in context of the guidance provided by experts. So, if you have ever read a research design for some manuscripts, you can see there that they will cite some literatures. Why the, for example, a certain study, I will choose this study um, use the quasi-experimental research design because this is the most appropriate in applying the interventions and having experiments based on um, based on based on the researches conducted tapos i-cite din ng author. So those are good examples also because as long as there are supporting literatures to your claims, that is a very good discussion with your research. Okay, that is for the research design, both quantitative and qualitative study. So now let's discuss specifically the types of research design for quantitative study. Okay, for quantitative research design, we have here the non-experimental research design and experimental research design. For non-experimental research design, remember always that for this design, there is no manipulation done to any study variable. And there, the variables are measured without researchers and interference. So what is your samples? What are your variables? Just handle with those variables, describe those variables, compare and correlate those variables. No need to manipulate those variables because you are doing non-experiment, non-experimental research design. So otherwise, if you manipulate those variables, that's what we call experimental research design. It is where the researcher establishes different conditions or treatments and then study their effects on the identified participants. So for non-experimental research designs, we have here the basics: descriptive, comparative, and correlational. For experimental research design, we have true or classical, then quasi. So let us discuss first the non-experimental research design. Okay, don't worry, it will just be a very short discussion. Okay, for descriptive research design, an example of non-experimental. So the purpose of descriptive studies is to describe and interpret the current status of individuals, settings, conditions, or events. That is according to Mettler 2014. So in descriptive research design for non-experimental, you are just simply describing your variables or simply describing your samples. For example, a researcher or a teacher wants to know if, okay. For example, a teacher wants to know if what is the level of knowledge of BEd fourth year students on COVID-19 in Compostela Valley State College. If you want to know the of level only
Sir
of
Michael.
a certain sample or a
Sir
certain
Michael.
yes, yes, ma'am.
I think your screen is not moving, sir, or your presentation is not moving.
Ay, wala dahil. Wait lang. Oh my. So, kali mo, stop na. Okay na mo, next na.
Okay na, okay na.
Ahamon to last.
Dara.
Kinig. Humana man yung gihapon. So we have non-experimental research design. These are the designs for non-experimental. Then these are also the designs for experimental, true, classical, and quasi. Okay. For example, you are just sorry kung wala siya na. Okay. For example, you are just determining the level of knowledge of fourth-year BEd, fourth-year students about COVID-19. You're just describing the answer for this question would either be the level of their knowledge is very high or low about the COVID-19. So you're just describing your sample. So that is only descriptive. We have also another example. What is the extent? If you want to know what is the extent of satisfaction of students in Compostela Valley State College in terms of facilities and instruction, you just want to know if the students are really satisfied for the facilities of the school and the instruction given by the school. So you just want to know those things. That's only descriptive research design. Next, we have here comparative. So for comparative, you compare and contrast two or more groups of the study subjects based on a particular dependent variable. For example, is there a significant difference in the level of knowledge between male and female students on COVID-19? Now, for this instance, you are now comparing two groups or two variables, the male and the female. Nabay, nabay kalahian ilang level of knowledge sa COVID-19, kalahian ilang level knowledge sa male o sa female in terms of COVID-19. So as you can see there, you need to first, to know the difference of these two groups, you need first to describe the level of knowledge or the extent or the level of knowledge of male students and female students. That is why, as you what observed earlier by the presentation of Sir Gomez, we have three questions. So for the quantitative research, this for the introduction, the statement of the problem, we have three questions. The two questions would be the descriptive. You need first to describe your samples, two samples, in order for them to compare and correlate. So the descriptive question here would be, what is the level of knowledge of male students on COVID-19? The second question, what is the level of knowledge of female students on COVID-19? Then the third question, that will be the comparative part. Is there significant difference the level of knowledge between male and female students on COVID-19? So that is why Sir Gomez said earlier that it is descriptive comparative design, descriptive correlational design, because he or the researcher uses a descriptive design and a comparative design. Sir, how about we only want to use a descriptive research design? Descriptive research design are mostly applied for surveys only. So when you have, you only have, if you want to have surveys, so that's for descriptive research design. Pero wala na siya gina-suggest for sa inyo sa action research. So dapat nadyo'y comparative, correlational, and other steps. So I just want you to understand better what is a descriptive and a comparative. Then another example. So are there differences in the extent of satisfaction of students in Compostela Valley State College in terms of facilities and instruction between male and female students? nakita ninyo ang ilahang differences between here the descriptive and the comparative one. So the descriptive, you just simply describe your samples or groups or variables. Now for comparative, you compare your descriptions between samples or groups. Okay, let's proceed. So dali education siya. Correlational. So we also have descriptive correlational research design. So for correlational research design, the purpose, its purpose is to correlate studies to look at relationships or association between two or more variables. So for correlational research design, you just want to know the relationship between variables or the association between two variables. For example, if the teacher wants to know the significant relationship between hours of study and the academic performance of BE Ed fourth year students in Compostela Valley State College. You just want to correlate hours of study to academic performance, or you just want to associate hours of study to academic performance. So first thing you are going to do, you will describe the level or the extent of their studying habit. And next, you are also to describe their academic performance. Then lastly, you are going to correlate them. Now, I have highlighted here that correlation does not mean causation. What does this mean? It only means that if you have a result which states that hours of study positively correlate to the academic performance of BEd fourth year students. So it is very impractical to conclude that having lots of time of studying can improve the academic performance of your students. That's a no-no for correlational, because in correlational you are just computing or identifying their associations. So that only means that um, how your independent variable or your hours of study, um, how can your independent variable or your hours of study really affects the academic performance. Ang gusto na ko i-mean is that, for example, you have a 60% of the hours of study can affect the academic performance by 60%. That only means that there are still 40%, that 40% the things 40% that are needed to be studied to know fully what are the things that affects the academic performance. So dili siya pwede jud yung maingon ka nga ang hours of study na kung mag-study ka dugay mo yung academic performance mo kuan jud mo taas, or mo taas mo level up yung academic performance. The only thing you can conclude for this one is that having lots of time studying can somehow or contribute to the improvement of the academic performance of a certain student. So it somehow contribute to the academic performance of a student. So that's how will you interpret or conclude for the correlational. Because as what I have said, there are also other stuffs that affects the academic performance. Di lang man ang hours of study. Maybe the environment. Is the environment conducive or not? Bisan daghan ka bisan ka kay when you analyze it well, kay bisan daghan ka og time nag-study, tapos during sa discussion kay saba kayong construction sa gawa sa classroom. So that can really affect the academic performance sa mga students. So mo siya for correlational. Okay, before we proceed to experimental research design, let me share to you first some of the sampling techniques. I know you already informed with the sampling techniques sa inyong statistics, pero ako lang gusto i-emphasize itong mga importanteng sampling techniques. Okay. For sampling techniques, we have two classifications: the random sampling techniques, or the sampling techniques, or the probability sampling techniques, and the non-random sampling techniques, or the non-probability sampling techniques. Okay, for random sampling techniques, ato lang i-discuss is the simple random sampling and the systematic sampling. For simple random sampling, it is a process of selecting n sample size in the population via random numbers through a lottery. So, ang Bisaya pa, mura siya nakay-box, tapos nakay mga tickets, tapos bunot-bunot lang. So, these are my samples. Ano lang. So, simple random sampling. The systematic sampling, the idea for this one is that first you have your population. Ayan eh. Ano day? What is a population and a sample? A population is the totality of your respondents. So, for example, B.Ed first year students. So that means that whole B.Ed first year students. When we say sample, it is only part of the population. So from B.Ed first year students, if you will take a sample, so B.Ed 1A or B.Ed, the first section of B.Ed first year students. So that's a sample of whole B.Ed first year students. So that's the idea of population and sample. So the question is, why do we get this is just for quantitative. Why do we get the sample out of the population? Because in reality, sometimes it is hard. There are studies. It is hard to conduct our studies if we consider if we consider all the respondents in a population. That is why you will just get samples. Typical example. When you assess the quality of grains, kung matumo sa matumo ka ng bugasan. Diba, matumo bugasan, mupalit mo ka ng isa ka sako. Let us say that is your population. Diba, magkuha mo gamay tapos inyong tanawo ninyo simuton kung kumot ba or puti ba nga bugas or whatsoever inyong timailhan, then pag humot, then puti, then good quality. So, paliton to yung kasako kay kani siya nga population. That is only an atypical illustration to how you get your samples. So, you will get a sample of grains, then you will test it, then you will have some conclusions with that out of the sample. Conclusions for your population out of the sample. Okay, sa systematic sampling. For the systematic sampling, first, you identify your number of samples. So how can we identify our number of samples? Actually, there are calculators now, online calculators to solve for the number of samples na inyong kinahanglan outside your populations. And there are also formulas like the Sloven's formula na pwede nyo gamiton para mag-identify mo number of samples. So, for the systematic sampling, kung na-identify yung population, let us say, yung population is 120, population is 20, then yung desired number of samples is only 5. So, for systematic sampling, you just divide those two things, 20 divided by 5. So that is 4. 20 divided by 5, that is 4. So for systematic sampling, you will arrange you will arrange your sana, all respondents. Then you will just count 1, 2, 3, 4. Bali 4. Okay, since 4 man imuhang answer no, sa imuhang population divided by sa inyong samples. So 20 divided 5, that is 4, for example. So you will just line all your 20 respondents. Dili lang, you will just make a kanang diagram. So ipasunod mo sila. Then you will select, you will count from the first ni mong gilain 1, 2, 3, 4. Katong fourth nga element mo to imong first respondent. Next na pod mag-count po kag 1, 2, 3, 4. Yung second mo to imong second respondent. Then it follows up to makuha ka og 5 respondents out of your population. So muna siyang sa systematic sampling. So muna tong ako ang emphasize for random sampling. Next is the non-random sampling. So for non-random sampling, I just want to discuss the purposive sampling. So the purposive sampling is a process of selecting based from judgment to select a sample which the researcher believed based on prior information will provide the data they need. So purposive sampling is very common to qualitative research because qualitative research examines a specific experiences, examples of phenomenology, the specific experiences of people. So that is why if you want to know the learning experiences of IP students in Compostela Valley State College, so you don't need to have a random sampling kay katulad mo sila imong i-test katong mga IP students sa CVSC. Now question, sir, what if daghan kayo ang IP students, sir? So maglisod Japon may kay daghan man kayo sila. If mga 14, 10 or 20, 24 lang mga students. So ato nang i-discuss later sa qualitative research design. So those are just the sampling techniques na ako ang gusto i-emphasize. Okay, balik ta sa research design. Wait. Okay, research design, we have here the next one for quantitative research. The quasi-experimental. So quasi-experimental is a non-random assignment. So pasabot, kung kag random, bunot lang. So kung dili siya random, so wala siya bunot lang. Sometimes lack control groups. It is because in experimental, it is known to have control groups and experimental groups. Control groups, these are your groups where there are no interventions applied. Experimental groups, these are your groups where there are interventions applied. So, common na siya, basta experimental, na control groups, apo experimental groups. Pero for experimental, sometimes it lacks control group. So, wala siya control group. Ako na siyang hatawag example later. Then, it established cause and effect relationship because you have this certain intervention. For example, sa quasi-experimental, the impact of listening to music on cognitive performance of students. Actually, experimental research design are common to action research because action research are made to address problems. So, kung wala ka intervention, kung mong research kay wala intervention sa problem, so dili na siya action research. Natog siya gitawag na action research is because you identify the problem, you have this intervention or you have the action plan. So mo siyang nahimo siyang action research. So for this one, imong intervention is that you have the listening to music. You want to know the impact of listening to music to the cognitive performance of your students. So for quasi-experimental, since it has a non-random assignment. So for example, sa isa ka section, you have, di ba, na-mention yung babae, lalaki. So non-random man siya, kasabot, malali mo siya gibunot-bunot lang. So gibutang nimo ang mga boys sa imong control group, gibutang po nimo ang imuhang mga girls sa experimental group. So that is non-random. So your control group now is the boys. So that is without intervention. Then your experimental group now, that is the girls with intervention. Kasi pasabutan na, sir. So ang control group, natural way lang ilang ang ginabuhat. So then i-measure na ko ilang cognitive performance. For experimental group, I will apply this strategy nga maminaw sa music. If mag-improve ba ilang performance or wala ba? Or parehas lang sila performance sa control group and experimental group. So mabase na sa imong results and sa imong mga discussion. Later on. So mo na siya for quasi-experimental. So another example, di ba? That's what I have stated there. It lacks sometimes it lacks a control group. So purely experimental lang siya. So for example, sa isa ka section, same lang gihapon, the effect of sectional material to increase the performance of students in statistics. You will test a certain instructional material para maibala nimo ato para ma-increase ang performance sa student. So this design mo ni siyang perfect illustration sa gihatag nga example ni Sir Gomez ngayon sa statement of the problem. Yan ang namay dito yung pre-test and post-test. So for that instance, wala na siya ay control group, instead experimental group na siya. It is because you have this isa ka section, first nimo buhaton, so nakay duha ka sessions. So sa isa ka section. So first nimo buhaton is wala nimo gihatagan itong instructional material, wala nimo gihatag yung intervention, natural way lang. Then what is their performance, measure nimo na performance. Then next second section, i-apply na nimo instructional material, then i-measure nimo ilahang performance of students if nag-improve ba gamit ang instructional material or wala. So it only have a experimental and experimental group. Wala siya ay control group. Kaya kato lang mismo group. Ang tawagan na sa pagkuan is test and retest. So inakay pre-test na po kay post-test. So muna siya for quasi-experimental. Next thing is the true experimental or classical experimental. So if the quasi-experimental have this non-random assignment, so for true experimental, na siya random assignment. Then at least one comparison group. So nadyo siya dapat control group and experimental group. So ang gingon dali at least one comparison group. So for higher researches, so they have this multiple analysis of groups man, the multiple analysis of groups. So dili na to na sa i-discuss kay basics man na itong i-discuss. Though kani man ang mga essential part para makakonduct mo research. Then same with it established cause and effect relationship. So randomly assignment, for example, kato gihapon, the impact of listening to music on the cognitive performance of students. So for example, mo nimong isa ka section. So mag-note lang ka, dapat equal, dapat ay siya kung pila ka book number sa imong control group, mao po imong number sa experimental group. Okay? So dapat equal sila. So since it is a true experimental man, so random lang, bunot-bunot lang. So, since nakadiri kuan ka buok, pila man? 6 times 3, naka-18. Naka-18. So, 9 sa pikas, 9 po sa pikas. So, saan mo pag-identify? So, magbutang lang ka, bunot lang ka, magbutang ka diri sa control group nimo, then magbutang ka diri sa mga experimental group. So, as kita niyo sa mga illustration, sago na siya. Ganina, di ba, boys sa control group, sa experimental girls. So, diri, sago na siya sa control group, boys, girls, experimental group, sago na siya. So, same goes on for the control group without intervention, wala tong listening to music. Then for the experimental group, natong listening to music or with intervention. Then you will identify if nabay impact sa ilang cognitive performance. Okay? Okay, that is for the quantitative research design. For qualitative research design, we have here different types. Case studies, ethnography, phenomenology, historical analysis, grounded theory, content, and discourse analysis. Okay. Content and discourse analysis. So, pero dili tanan na ni ato ang i-discuss because some of these research designs are not applicable in terms sa time mo lang ihatag sa inyo nga maganda kong research. Then for action research also, di pa siya applicable for action researches. Okay, let's start first with case studies. So case studies involve a long time and in-depth study of a person, group, organization, or a certain phenomena. This is often used to narrow down a very broad field of research into one or few easily researchable examples, and also useful for testing whether a specific theory and model actually applies to phenomena in the real world. So for case studies, you will first here identify a unique case in order to conduct a research. For example, a study on how students' vocabulary development is influenced by their environment. The theory there is environment influences a person's vocabulary action or development. Since it involves a long time and in-depth, this case study, for example, you will study the senior high school students, the gas na strands and the stem na strands. So you will, in order to have a quality output or results for your discussions, you should observe them from the beginning of senior high school, or you will know you will study them in the beginning of their senior high school, the middle, and the end of their senior high school. So with that, you can actually have a very good data to discuss. So you can discuss for this problem. You can discuss their manner of conversations. It is vocabulary development, influenced by their environment. So manner of conversation, the expression they use, and also the known vocabulary words. So those are the things that you can discuss for case studies. Next one, we have here the ethnography. So ethnography, dili na siya tayo discuss, dili siya somehow applicable and not realistic for a very short span of time. Kay kailangan sa ethnography, you will immerse with a certain group because ethnography, it really involves in studying particular cultural group, not to para nakay clear understanding sa ilang belief systems o sa ilang mga practices. One of the aims sa ethnography is to have a more in-depth understanding of the organizational setup and the lifestyle of a certain group, members of a certain group. So, dili siya applicable for action research. Um, pero okay na, as long as kanang makabalo mo sa ng ethnography. Next, kani, man siya very common for qualitative research design, phenomenology. So, man siyang kasagaran jud nga ginagamit. So, phenomenology examines the human experiences regarding a certain phenomenon. It also recognizes that each experience is unique and meaningful. So, it presents a detailed discussion of the lived experiences of the participants. Okay, if you want to know the lived experiences or the experiences of a certain of a certain individual or a certain group of people, you have this phenomenology. Pero if dili na siya kung wala pa siya, kung unique kani siya ang kanang scenario, unique siya ang case, that will fall under the case study. Ang kanang mga na-experience na sa imong mga respondents or a certain group na experience na mga cases, so that will be not going to under sa case studies, because sa case studies always have this kanang unique cases man. Pero for the lived experiences, sa mga human experiences, mga experiences na, so under na siya sa phenomenology. So that's what I understand about this phenomenology. Then, for example, we have here recognizing the strategies used by foreign students to adapt to new language learning environment. So, if you have this phenomenology research design, so you will gusto man mo mahibalaan ang mga strategies sa mga foreign students sa pag-adapt sa new language sa ilang learning environment. So you will mangita ka og mga students na syempre foreign students na lahi-lahi, so na Chinese, Korean, sa mga other foreign students. Then you will have these interviews. So interviews can be done through focus group discussion and in-depth interviews, or the IDI and FGD. So meaning sa FGD and IDI. I think the number of samples sa kaning yani mga study, there are no kanang specific yani theory nga kanila jud dapat jud dapat, pero as suggested for the phenomenology, if I am not mistaken, it would be at least 14 and at most 24. So 14, 7 for IDI, then 7 for your focus group discussion. Tama na siya. You will have these interviews. For example, may-interview ka sa mga foreign students. So you will know their experiences in adapting the new language, their struggles, the new language, then what is their adapting strategies sa new language. You will for phenomenological research design, dili mo mag-expect nga ay kanidali lang kayo, pwede na mo ma-char-char lang o kanang mga dapat pag-discuss ninyo, you will make sure to have a detailed discussion of the result. Always dapat detailed discussion of the result. Na-discuss ni Sir Gomez, di ba natin yung mga coping mechanisms, so mga na siya, pangitaon mo itong mga research questions gani. So first nimo question is you will have the experiences, second struggles, then third is the adapting strategies. Then those general questions na siya mga sub questions also. Kasi mga supporting questions. So that is the phenomenology. Next is the historical analysis. So for historical analysis, again, it is not applicable for action research. Historical analysis, it is the one researchers sa historical analysis. Researchers dere sa historical analysis relies on the primary sources of historical data. So kailangan ni mo diri is ang mga direct accounts of event, archival data, official documents, personal records, eyewitness records. So ay nga na historical analysis. Ang dili na to na siya i-discuss og maayo. Okay, dili po na siya. Next is the content and discourse analysis. So kaya siya na katong last sem na nag-on discourse analysis sa mga English students. Okay. Content and discourse analysis, this requires an analysis or examination of text or content of the modes of communication. So example, understanding the language of journalism. I actually, this discourse analysis, according to publichealth.columbia.edu, that discourse analysis conducted in order to identify intentions, focus of communications, focus or communication trends of an individual, group, or institution. So muna siya. Ang that is on the reason why discourse analysis, content and discourse analysis are conducted. So balik sa example. We have here understanding the language of jargons. So as what the definition you have the analysis of the different modes of communication. So for the example, you have you can have journals, articles, audiovisual materials. Then you will examine the similarities and differences of journalism jargons or the language of journalism, and also the regular communication jargons. You will, for this example, you will examine their similarities and differences. Next, lastly, we have here the grounded theory. So grounded theory also is not kay medyo lisod-lisod siya. Kasagaran pang dissertation ng grounded theory. So medyo lisod-lisod siya. Actually, grounded theory helps to offer an explanation about the main concern of the participants involved sa mga researches. Tapos, you will discover a new theory. Actually, ang grounded theory mas lisod siya kay you need to develop a theory, then kailangan i-accept siya yung theory bago mahimo siya nga sa imong study. Dapat na dyan ma-accept sa theory. So if wala, so failure amongst research study. So much for that. Okay. Hindi po na siya. So for the summary, we have here the research designs for qualitative, case studies, ethnography, phenomenology, historical analysis, content and discourse analysis, and grounded theory. So these are the objectives. For case study, to have an in-depth examination particular case or phenomenon. Then ethnography, to learn more about the life and practice of a specific group of people. Then phenomenology, and follow sa grounded theory. And also for the data gathering, sa case studies, so mag-focus na tatong possible magamit niya. Sa case studies, na interviews, observation, with participant, and may have multiple sessions, di ba? Mas maayo man sa case studies kaya if you want to really know to assess the case, mas maayo nga nakay multiple sessions. So for phenomenology, I will have interviews, observations, focus group discussions, and done at a specific time. Then content and discourse analysis. So we have analysis or the examination text or content of the different modes of communication. Then for sampling, relatively smaller population sample. So it will have a smaller, kasagaran dyan sa qualitative is purposive sampling. So smaller population sample than quantitative. So nandito lang kasagaran nag-range 14, kung wala ko naman sa number sa range 14 to 24. So context specific. So that is why it is purposive sampling because kung sa imong context, kung sa lang imong gusto studyhan, so kung sa ang context sa imong study, so dito lang jud siya mag-focus sa imong sampling. Then carefully selected. So, mana siya. Carefully selected for the purposive sampling. Okay, that is for the qualitative research design. The other than that, we have here the other essential things that you should know and consider for the methodology. So even if you have other formats, you will engage other formats as you go on with this one, this profession, teaching profession. Yan, maka-encounter mo other formats for research. And these are the essential things that you will always consider in your methodology. So for quantitative research, balik ta sa quantitative research, after sa research design, you will consider the population and sample. In this part, you will describe the population you wish to study. Anong kaniman imuhang gusto sa diyan nga population, then identify your sampling technique. What is your sampling technique that to be used and justify why is it that this sampling technique is useful or valid for my study. So as always, I always emphasize that when you claim to have this type of sampling technique, when you claim to have this type of research design, you will always please consider to have always supporting literatures with that, because this can really help you to discuss well your research or your manuscript. Then discuss also the limitations of sample, if any. Then address IRB issues, how you will protect human rights. IRB issues is this also this concerns with the if kanang imuha bang kuan kay very may mga study or mga some population sample kay sana very discriminating and ay mga certain nga mga researches nga basta ano na lang nga dili nyo sana I should consider nga dili siya discriminating just study. Then ensure anonymity, and please always gain consent sa inyo mga samples. Then research objectives and hypothesis. So bali sa katong format na to, nani siya sa chapter 1, which is discussed by Mr. Gomez. So katong research objectives, these are your questions nga gusto niyo ma-answers and gusto niyo ma-answer atong mga statement of the problem, RQ, research question. The hypothesis, these are your alternative hypothesis. So for quantitative, your alternative hypothesis, kung comparative, di ba, is there significant difference ang comparative. So imuhang alternative hypothesis will be there is a significant difference between the kaning variable and kaning variable. Then imuhang null hypothesis, there is no significant difference. So remember always sa hypothesis natay duha, alternative na kung comparative ay significant difference. Kung sa null hypothesis, there is no significant difference. Kung correlational pod, imuhang alternative, there is a significant relationship. Imong alternative hypothesis, imuhang null hypothesis, there is no significant relationship. Whenever mag-quanti mo. Kay, ay sir, nga nung kailangan mo dyan na muna kay better, kay whenever pangutanan mo sa inyong study, mag-defense na mo, kabalo mo how you will defend your study because you really understand the concept on how these things works. Okay, next, the instrument. You will consider the instrument. You will describe the development of your instrument, how you intend to pilot test it to ensure the reliability. Pilot testing are done to researcher-made na mga questionnaires or nga mga instruments. Okay. Unsa man na, dili nimo siya kami nabuhatan ni mong questionnaire, so kami nabuhatan ni mong instrument, tapos i-conduct mo dito, so dili na siya pwede. Kailangan ma-undergo na siya og pilot testing for reliability purposes. Basin day mali-mali pa mantog ang result kay nga na kay ang yung instrument kay wala po din nagkadiong dapat pilot. Tapos kailangan gina-recommend po na siya sa rec ay mga pilot test. If your instrument has already been developed, so pwede siya ninyong instrument is dili sa researcher made or dili ka maghimo, pwede mo mag-adapt sa internet. If ang court ihang mga variables and indicators, so pwede kayo. Basta i-mention lang ninyo, ahanin niyo gikuha inyong instrument. Pwede ninyo i-improvise. Basta i-mention lang ninyo, ahaton niyo gikan gi-adapt. Then, for the instrument, i-discuss ninyo dito, you will want to describe yung instrument, then who validated it. Kailangan dyan, ipa-validate inyong instrument. And how it has been used, research, or researchers who use it, then where it is available, or how you acquired your instrument. So, muna siya ang mga things na inyo discuss for your instrument sa inyong manuscript for methodology. Next is the variables. So, okay na paano siya, discuss na siya ganina ni Sir Thomas and Sir Pets, o ni Sir Pets. Then data collection, explain in detail the admission of the instrument, including, please take note, including the dates, times, how conducted, and etc. Be detailed sa in discussing your, di ba na si Sir Pets ganina nga, basin mahimo siya picture writing, ay na mo ka ng, dili man sa kung moingon niya, be detailed, yan, daghan mo ka ng mga flowery, butangan na po dahil ninyo mga flowering words, muna siya picture writing. Ang ginamin sa be detailed is, you will be more specific in discussing your manuscript. Then, for data collection is, you will have this question, answer, how will you enter the data and treat missing data. Dapat ma-discuss na sa inyo ang data collection. Then data analysis for quantitative, for each research objective and hypothesis, how you will analyze the data, which statistics you will use, and justify this choice. What p-value you intend to use and why. So for data analysis sa quantitative, dapat for each kasagaran ni siya sa imuhang mga research objectives, sa imuhang mga statement of the problem, katong mga questions nimo. Kabara ko na discuss na ninyo sa inyong statistics. For example, katong di ba, katong gihatag na example ni Sir Gomez kay first two questions kay descriptive, describe nimo, so unsa man nga statistical, unsa na unsa man nga statistical nga tool, or unsa man nga how can you analyze the data, so nimo pag-determine sa level or sa extent. So kung may kag-level or extent lang, so may taon lang nimo ilahang mean sa inyong data, kung level or extent lang. Pero kung kuana kanang descriptive, kanang comparative correlation na, for comparative daghan Daghan jud kay mga t-test, p-test, nya nya unsa na, nya mga kuan sa comparative na yung mga ANOVA, then sa correlational po daghan. Then for the p-value, since we have here educational research, kasagaran is kuan 0.05 0.05 kay for sa man social kasagaran mga social researches 0.05, then business researches kay 0.1 or 0.10 kay sa ila okay lang daw dako kanang kuan marginal error kay okay lang daw dako kanang marginal error o kanang magkamali ba kay makabawi mo daw gihapon sila, makabawi mo ng mga business research. Then for pinaka strict is actually ang kuan medicine, so gamay lang kayo point 0.6 kaya kuan ba yun na ilang nahimo mga medicine, so lain sad mamatay ilang pat yun sa dapat gamay lang ang marginal error. Next is the qualitative research sa theoretical. So, na-explain ni Sir Gomez. So, mula ni Sir Gomez emphasize. Then, participants. You need to describe your participants, selection technique, and same with quantitative. Na siya, qualitative participants. Then, data collection. Again, you will be detailed in discussing your data collection, describe the steps in order, sa mga first na imong himo, then up to last sa pag-gather nimo sa data. Then reliability, so you must always address reliability issues. For example, nga sa imong mga instruments, if na-validate may mga instruments, so that is for the reliability. Always make sure nga namoy kasagaran if makasugat mo ka ng mga stricto kay nga mga defense, manam siya nga how sure you are nga kanimuhang instrument gigamit kay tama ni siya. So mga nga ka wala kay matubag. So dapat always make sure we are not that certain, ma'am, but we are sure that it is best for our research because it undergoes a reliability test. Mag-chika-chika din ka. So, very important, kaya kay mga backup pa rin defense, dili mo ma-iurok. Then, data analysis. For data analysis, identify mo mga themes. So, sigara nihatag na sa inyong analyst. Inyohan lang mag-classify. Inyohan lang. Classify din, mag-label. Discuss. Then subjectivities. Then these identify the researchers' preconceptions or biases and how this will be addressed during the data collection or analysis. So na mga researchers' perceptions sa qualitative research. Perceptions or biases about sa study and subjectivities. So that's all for part sa methodology. I hope sa kamubo you learn something bahalag gamay or na-refresh lang man. Okay, so that's all for methodology. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much, sir. Now let us proceed with our fourth speaker focusing on action research proper with the third chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Lois Jade M. Taran.
Hello, good afternoon. I will presenting my presentation. Makita na ba? Klaro na? Okay. So now this afternoon we will proceed to chapter 3 of your action research. So this comprises the results and discussion of your research. So here, as what you can see, as presented, these are the research step. No? Isa na sila sa mga steps nga very significant when it comes to research. So first, you need to have your research question, then the method, and you have to method selection, sample selection, then the next thing is data collection, then data analysis. So for data analysis, you don't need to analysis the data since you have an analyst, no? You will be assigned analyst, no, after sa inyong data collection. After you have gathered your data, then you need to rearrange those questions, no? Per question, then per answer sa inyong mga participants. Then the next thing to do after ninyo ma-receive, no, na-gather na ninyong data, i-forward ninyo sa inyong analyst. Then after the analyst will give you the results, then here comes your part, no, in which you will present the results and give your discussion. So before I will proceed to the main topic, let's just have an sort of activity first. So assuming, no, assuming that you have already collected the data and transcribed, and you have to arrange it logically. So mani siya, no, example sa inyong, for instance lang hinihanga mo ning siya nga question. For example, this is your question. So social media chat, can pets help people with chronic illness? So this is your research question, one of your main question. And then these are the statements that you have gathered, no? You have from student A, B, and C. So with this, what you're going to do is out of these statements, no? Out of these statements that answers the question about what can pets help people with chronic illness. So you have to create a simple mini topic or theme that you can get from the data given by the student A, B, and C. So unsa tong mga what are those matagaan ninyo siya theme, no? Na pare-pareha or topic ba kaya? Like unsa gyud ang ilahang but pasabot, no? Kung i-generalize nimo ba nga mas same sila og kana ganing matagaan mo silang tema, no, based sa ilahang mga statements. So, I will read student A. According to student A, getting my puppy has made so many days so much better. Student B, my dogs are my healing pads. Healing pads na siya. Healing pads. I mean, heating pads. My laughter, my secret keepers, my exercise buddy, my bed warmers, my heart and soul, they were there at night when I need to cry over the pain without judgment. Student C, my cats, Horse and Pop give me a reason to get out of bed on the tough days. So can you give me, it could be a statement, no? I mean, it could be a phrase, no? Inyo ma-generalize ninyo sa nga makuha ninyo ang tema ani niya. So this is a process of analyzing your data.
Excuse me, Ma'am Taran. Wala
Yeah.
gud nagdagan imong presentation. Karon pa. Sige, Ma'am.
Wala, kani. Okay
Oo,
na.
nakita na, Ma'am. Nakita na.
Sorry. So thank you for the information. Okay. I will just give you a few more seconds. You can just give a phrase, no, or just one word. nga ma-generalize na to siya. Unsa kay but pasabot, unsa kay ano, no kana ganing iyahang main nga marag mahimo na siya, ma-generic na to siya nga theme. Na ba? Hello? Madungog pa ko.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, unsa man ang naasa, unsa kaya ang mga theme nga pwede nato makuha na out of that? Or topic? Okay, medyo basig na nanibago pa mo. Okay, with this, no, this expresses on the feelings, no, sa for those people or for those owner, no, mga pet lovers. So they consider, as a pet lover, they consider their pets as a relief, as a source of comfort and a source of happiness. So ing ana ang way of kana ganing the way on how to analyze your data that was gathered from your participants. So it takes a coding process, no? Uh, we need to sort, then synthesize. So kailangan siya, as a result sa inyong kuan, ang mubuhat ani is ang inyong analyst, in which siya mohatag og categories, theme. Pero ang theory para rin siya sa mga dissertation, no? Like as what Sir More had said, no? Like sa mga grounded theory nga need jud ka mo ang inyong result mag-create, maka-craft jud mo theory out of your study. So the results and discussion. So since you are we are using the embed format here in CVSC. So the content of this is the introduction. So under that is the review of literature, you have the methodology, and we are in the results and discussion. So when you are here in this part, so medyo you're halfway, no? Halfway na mo sa inyong research. But then, don't expect too much kay daghan kay nag mga circumstances as what Sir Pedro had mentioned lately, no nga it kanang there will be a struggle when it comes to time. So ang time ninyo o ang time sa inyong participant, like kamo jud ang mo habol sa ilaha, no? Make time nga kana sa sila ma-vacant, then kana nga mga issues. Then after that, after ninyo maka-gather og data, makakuha sa result, you have to undergo summary and conclusion. You have to present it. So what it is all about? So this is a chapter of research that present the findings and outcomes of research and reasons for that particular result in form of text, figures, graphics, and charts. So first, what are the results? So in the result, it tells about the outcome findings of your study. So diri makit-an nimo based sa mga statements sa imong mga participants or respondents. So you can gather more results. Then in this area, you have to present the data and findings na naka-ordered. Tapos, it is being analyzed in ways justified earlier in your methodology. So, kaya nga, present siya noon on ang steps ninyo. So, na naman may guide
Excuse me,
Yes?
Ma'am Lois. Wala na pud nag-move imong slides.
Okay na? Kani?
Oo, karon
Ay,
okay.
Tars. Ay, mo.
Yes?
Ang kan.
Yes.
Ang
Unsa man?
i-share kaya katong kuan, katong ay ning PPT. Di mag-present man ka katong window gani.
O window ni siya. Ay, ako stop sharing sana ko ha. Double check.
Ikuan daan
Open.
ikuan daan ituplo ka to daan sa imong PowerPoint gani katong mag-present tapos i-alt tab sa imong Gmail tapos dito na ka mag-click sa present now.
Okay.
Kaya makita na mo kay katong kuan gani katong na yung mga slides sa kilid.
Hmm. Okay na? Kani?
Team ra Japon.
Same ra gyapon.
Bali, i-open yung PowerPoint dan tuplo ka ng kuan daan. Ano ganing yung sanitaw ganing.
Unsa man na?
Ganing slideshow ba? Nga na mag-present na ka. Na more TV sa baba. Tuplo ka na daan na. Natuplok na nimo tapos balik ka dito sa kuan.
Ma'am Lois,
Sir?
Google.
paki-slideshow daw daan before i-screen share.
Slideshow na. Tapos present
Okay.
now tapos kato nga window ang ikuan screen share.
Dito siya. Di mo siya makita. Good pag kuan.
Lang, slideshow tapos
Na
alt tab.
ma'am. Tapos slideshow po.
Alt tab tars. Padulong sa kuan, Google Chrome.
Ay ma'am, ay
Yes.
nga instruction si Sir Takasan po.
Okay, wait lang.
Hello, Ma'am Tars. Ah,
Yes.
kato ba itong ginas, Ma'am? Kato, i-open lang to daan, Ma'am. Sa slideshow, i-open ka yung PowerPoint, Ma'am.
Tapos,
Sa babaw, good, Ma'am, na slide, Ma'am, slideshow. Kung minu nga slideshow.
then,
Na option dra, Ma'am. I-try ko click ng sa option dra, Ma'am, kay murag sa imuha na slideshow, pero pag share ni mo, dili siya mo reflect. May option dra,
ay,
murag.
wala na ko nadunggan.
Ma'am?
Wala, dili maklaro imong tingog sa ko ah.
Di maklaro.
O,
Patay na.
sige na. Okay na. Ang sa to ganina.
Kanay slideshow good ma'am. Kontek as mabaw. Menu ma'am,
Mm.
slideshow nga menu.
Menu,
Hmm.
present online,
Dili ma'am, so makita nimo ang option nimo ma'am.
kuon. Present online, online custom slide, setup slideshow. Mo
Kaya
lang.
open ko PowerPoint i-guide ti ka kay para makasunod ka sa imong gi-discuss.
Okay.
Kana kung sa ano ma'am, kumante ka ng sa monitor kana sa under sa slideshow na use presenter view.
Use presenter view.
Under sa slideshow ma'am. Nga menu sa taas.
Naa.
Oh, i-uncheck na palihog na ma'am.
Oo, naagid ay. Okay na, sir.
Okay na, ma'am? I-share na po.
Sir Tax?
Yes, ma'am. I-press to na sa baba, ma'am. Karang slide, ma'am. Diya, diya. Dahil magawas, ma'am. Wala. Wala, ma'am, no? I-check balik, ma'am. Sige, ma'am.
Same lang gyapon.
Okay. Gano'n na lang, ma'am. Share na lang with ano, ma'am. Ayun na lang pag window, ma'am.
Dito lang ko sa katong full screen.
Yes, ma'am. Pero i-check na lang po sa interview, ma'am. Naka-extend yata na yung muhang display, ma'am.
Wait, ako na lang naikuan.
Hmm.
Okay lang i-duplicate sir, no? PC screen lang ta siya.
Yes, ma'am. Duplicate lang, ma'am.
Okay. Try. Kani sir. Same lang gyapon.
Same kaya po, ma'am.
Pero makita ba tara?
Makita na ko, ma'am. Pero dili na lang ka mag, ano, ma'am. Mag-navigate sa kilid, good, ma'am. Sa kilid na lang ka mag-navigate, ma'am, ka per pages. Diya, ma'am. Diya lang ka, ma'am. Maklaro, ma'am po.
Kani?
Dito lang, ma'am.
Okay lang na.
Ganina na lang, ma'am. Nga, isabay na lang navigate. Itong isa, ma'am, pikas kanina. Kaya maklaro. Itong isa ka option.
Normal or kaning slide?
Normal lang, kaya lang.
Ngani na lang.
Yes, ma'am. Nga lang, ma'am.
Sige. Makita mo kay gyapon.
Yes, ma'am, makita. So,
Okay. Na-overextend to ganina.
possible, ma'am.
I see. Okay. Asa na ganito? Okay. Okay na ba? So, again, based for the results, we have to present the data, the findings, na ka-ordered siya, then analyze in ways justified earlier in methodology. Then, you have to use past tense in this area, like, since you already, that is the data given na, no? So, dili na siya same atong mag future tense mo during sa preparation kay since you already have gathered your data already and you are into your results. Then you have to describe the findings in a simple way with the help of data, figures, and so also you have to present figures and tables. So discussion. So what does the result or data from the experiment mean to us is described in this discussion. So in this area, whatever the result, no, ang unang-una gid sa tanan na dapat you have to be strict on this, no. You should have to be honest with your data. So as much as possible, especially sa kanaganing sa qualitative, no? For the qualitative, labi na karon, um, it's a big no-no para sa, since pandemic biya jud, no? Basig ang inyong himuon is mag-gather mo data tungod kay kulang man ang inyong mga participants, inyuhan na lang himo-himuan og data. And with that action, napo na siya consequence, no? At the end of the day, inig magpa-analyze na mo sa inyong data, na tendency nga, especially kamura ang naghimo. So ang tendency ana kung kamo ra ang inyuha ra ang kuan idea, pwede na siya ang idea nimo magbalik-balik. So you have to be honest with your data na dapat jud i-collect jud na ninyo siya based sa inyong standard, no? Describe ninyo dito as a uh, no? Before ani munang kailangan jud kaayong kana ganing you are true to your data. Kay at the end of the day kamo lang gyapon ang mag-suffer ana. Kay dili enough ang inyong mapakita nga result, no? At the end sa inyong study. Then, function of discussion. The function of discussion is to first interpret the results in light of what was already known about the subject. Then you have to explain your understanding of the problem after taking results into consideration. So there will be at some point no based sa inyong mga variables na siguro may mga expected answers sa inyong mga participants, then others no nga napoy mga ideas nga wala ninyo gi-expect, like based po to sa iyang experience, no? Manang, the main factor nga nung kailangan jud no, we need to be honest with our data kay para mabal-an nato ang ilang mga standpoints. Then, you have to explain how the results answer the question under the study. So, you have to discuss, no? You have to narrate ang based sa inyong nakitaan nga result. Then, as per mentioned, dapat in detail siya. Then, you have also a supporting statement. Then, what is the difference between results and discussion? So, results is the core of the research. So, it is the core of your research paper. Without the result, you can't have your discussion. Kay mo gyud siya ang first nga inyong i-gather kay para naamoy ika-discuss, no? Ika-present. Then ma-apply po siya for further you have these implications based sa inyong nag-gather nga data. Then data generated by doing research after validation and verification is written. So results are important in answering the objectives, findings of the research. So all these things, no, ang findings sa research, ang results sa research, and then when kung also it answers if ang inyong objective na-attain ba or nakuha ba siya, then ang discussion is you have to discuss the meaning of the results. Anyway, I will give you the sample later, no, and the format that we can use. And stating clearly what their significance is. Then next is you have to compare the results with theoretical expectations. So, di ba na naman mo yung theoretical framework, theoretical lens. So, you have to compare your results, no, ang inyong data sa inyong mga theoretical expectations. Then, you have also part of the discussion, you have to present statements, mga supporting statements gikan sa inyong participants and also from your RRL, no, to support. Then for the presentation of data, there will be tables and figures. Graphs and flow diagrams are often used to present details, whereas the narrative section of result tends to be used to present the general findings. So after you have gathered the result, you will have a discussion. Then after that, you can do your reflect na ninyo, no? And in order for you to have your action plan. Okay, part of the action research is your action plan. So that mo gina siya ang pinaka main target, no, nga mo nang kanang karon pa lang daan maguna-una na mo nga unsay mga problema, no, what are those problems nga nakita ninyo nga pwede within the classroom, no, within the classroom, what are those problems nga nang arise sa pwede pud karon no during pandemic or whatsoever sa inyong hunahunaan. Then, at the end of your study, you can craft your action plan. Then, numerical data can usually be presented more effectively in tables or graph and in text. B, the order of presentation of the result could be either chronological to correspond with the methods or from the most to the least important. So, when presenting your data, you have to consider nga align jud siya sa inyohang based on your research question. So what are the points, what are the we have here in preparing results and discussion? So mo ni siya ang importante, no? When you're preparing results and discussion, it undergoes processing of data, no, since mag-process na siya, mag-process mo sa inyong data, mag-gather mo, ihatag ninyo sa inyong mga participants, respondents, then you have to collect all those things, then i-arrange ninyo into a logical orders, especially sa qualitative, kung unsa tong main question, mga main question sa imong research question, ang first question, no, ang katong first question sa student nga iyang giansiran, dapat moupod to ang imong pagka like magtapad tanan ang answer sa question 1, tapos ang question 1 dapat itapad nimo tanan. What, for instance, you have here for instance, so ang first question, what are the experiences of a guidance counselor with regards to the disruptive behavior of the learner? So si guidance counselor 1 dapat isulat na niya ang kibali ang answer ani is butang nimo siya dere. Answer number 1, like para sa kung gihimo ganina, like student 1, student 2, dapat i-arrange na ninyo sa daan before ninyo na ihatag sa inyong analyst, ha. Para nag-abot dito naka synchronize na siya and ready to be analyzed na. Kay i-check man gud na niya or i-analyze na niya tong unsa tong mga same statements. Kung sa tong mga same statements, and it would reflect kung pag same statement na nila, no, it means nga ang experiences sa isa ka tao sa first student, iyang experience kay same with the second student, no, nga in which kana ganing dako na siya factor and it will give weight sa imuhang data. Then we have here the processing information. So ano siya ang process. First, you have to edit, then code, then you have to classify, then the tabulation. So examination of collective raw data to detect error and omission to correct this when possible. So first inyong himuon kung ma-receive na ninyo ang data is you have to basig na ay mga errors dito, no, like mga minimal errors lang, pero dili gid na sa pwede nga kana ganing i-rephrase ninyo nga lahion gyud ninyo ang ilang mga statements. So bawal jud na siya. Pwede ninyo upon presenting kung Bisaya gyud na iyang gisulti, dapat during sa interview or IDI, dapat mag-good maka-record mo, tapos namoy recording, no, voice recorder, naka-prepare na siya, Tapos magsulat mo ana. Then as to result, kailangan no nga inyuha na siyang i-ready. So you will do the editing phase. Next is the coding. So the process of assigning numerals or other symbols so that the response can be put into a limited class. So nganong kailangan man nato mag-coding? Okay, we value kasi value nato ang kanaganing privacy um, sa ato ang mga participants, no? Labi na jud nga ang study is grabe ka kanang murag dili siya pwede nga magawas. So anyway, ang sa ato sa education kanang ang dili man kayo mga heavy ang topic, no? Okay, within the premises lang man sa school or even the attitude, mga characteristics sa bata, then about mga population sa results like mga comparison. So pero in in presenting you have to do the coding like ang for instance si Maria dapat iyahang pangalan naka-code na siya dili nimo itugan ang iyang tinuod nga pangalan and user nimo iyahang uh, para ang privacy ma-retain. Kay di ba kung ikaw ang interviewon tapos makita nimo pangalan full name pa jud so maulaw jud ang maulaw niya pakita ang result so it's a big no dapat it should be kanang naka-pseudonym or dapat naka-code. So sa ato ang kuan um sa qualitative naka-code na siya no manang natay ginatawag na pseudonym pero pag quantitative under gyapon na siya sa numbers no ang per student assign na siya by number so depende na sa inyo hangkuan pag coding so classification convergence of raw data into homogeneous group in order to get a meaningful relationship so you have to classify the data no kung unsa tong pareha og answer parehag tubag then in order to get a meaningful nga ganing result or relationship to get the relationship of those kanang responses kailangan nato na siya and it undergoes na siya so nabilong na siya pag analyze na sa atong mga analyst then tabulation in this part after na ihatag ang mga result gikan sa analyst you have to na may mga kuan ano mga like emerging themes ipakita na and even sa gikan sa atong mga statistician but then you have to provide a statistical table kay para mas more siya nga understandable during for your presentation so this as mentioned earlier no these are the by Sir More, these are the using of measures, especially in analyzing in quantitative for analysis. So we have the measures of central tendency. First we have the mean, then median and mode. Then when we say mean, nabilong na siya all about the average, no? Average of the data set nga that it could be found by adding all number set then dividing the number values in the set so then the median is when a data set is ordered from least to greatest then mode it is the number that occurs most often in the data set kapag mga nagbalik-balik then measures of when you have to locate them when you have to know the measures of central tendency but then kung dito na pud mo sa dispersion we have here the standard deviation and variance. So the standard deviation, it is as statistical measures the dispersion of a data set relative to its mean and is calculated as the square root of variance. So variance also mo measure ni siya sa variability, and it is calculated by taking the average of square deviation from your mean. So next is I will just give you a background on this. So measures of relationship, correlation. We have here the correlation. Correlation, this measure on the extent of which two variables are linearly related. From the term itself, relation, no, kung related ba ang both variables, meaning if they change together at a constant rate. So it's a common tool, kaning correlation, it is a common tool for describing simple relationship without making a statement about cause or effect, no, mga cause and effect ng mga studies. The next is regression analysis. This is used to analyze or regression analysis is used to describe the relationship between set of independent variables and dependent variables. Lastly, we have t-test and z-test. So, as mentioned earlier, no, na kuha naman na siya ganina. Then, so what are the points to be considered, no, in presenting your data? So, first, you have to divide chapter into sections according to the objectives. Then, also sa inyong mga questions, no, choose one best way instead of presenting same data in several ways. So you have to choose on how you will present your data. Then do not present tables and figures in text form. So naka-text form man siya tanan. Nagid siya kanang prescribed format. Then tables and figures should be clearly labeled in order of being referred in the text. So example, table, inyo ginang butangan, okay, for example, you present table. So table 1, 2, 3, 4. So first table ang inyong gihimo, then second table para ma-identify ninyo na siya. Dayon. Then, okay. Then is each table should be given a name. So dapat na amoy ano siya ang makategory no nga ginabutang mo niya. That would be their names, no. Yang mga figures, butangan gyapon na ninyo sa description. Table captions are always placed above the table while figure captions are placed below. So always remember, ang table name should place no above your na siya sa baba. So we have here for the qualitative result. So mo siya ang content no na under sa inyong results and discussion. So, kani siya, all these things is connected to your research questions. So, first is you have to present the profile of your participants. Next is categorization of data. Then, katong mga research question ninyo all about experience, especially sa quality ni sa experiences, sa coping mechanism, then sa insights. So, ako ipakita sa inyo nga na module ni siya ang kanaganing setup no in the way of presenting. So, muna siya diri siya asa ni siya gikuha, it is based on the research question. So, for the first question, naka-indicate diri ang experiences, no? So experiences, then coping mechanism. So teacher cope, how did the teacher cope? Parent, how does the parent cope? How does the guidance counselor cope? Then next is what are the insight? What are the insights? So mo to na experience encountered by the participant, coping mechanism. So naka-rearrange na siya kung unsa tong pagka-arrange sa inyo, the way ninyo gi-present sa inyong research question. Dapat ing ato pod inyong arrangement sa inyong presentation as per indicator. So for the quantitative, you have to so mapod niya siya ang content. So this is a result from the study of bilingual instruction and its effect in the macro skills of public elementary school learners. So kani siya nga study is proudly gikan gyud ni siya sa CVSC. Then ila ila ano Alvarez, no? So this is the result. So same with the qualitative, dapat ang inyong research question connected lang gyapon. Kung unsa tong pinakauna mo putoy i-present ninyo sa primero nga table, then when you are about to know sa inyong research question, you want to know the extent of bilingual instruction, then inyong i-present sa pinaka-primero, then followed by the level of macro skills. Next is the relationship between the extent of bilingual instruction. So relationship na, macro skills, then extent. Then the last is prediction of linguistic awareness. So later I will present to you unsa ni siyang kuan. So this is the statement of the problem. No, mo na ilang statement of the problem, and as a result mo na ilang presentation content sa ilang study. So what are the things that needs to be discussed in presenting in the lesson in the chapter 3? So first, you have to discuss the result according to the order of research question. So as mentioned earlier, no, you have to present your result according to the order of your research question. Then tables are in between textual discussions. So namoy mga discussions jud ana every kuan ninyo presentation, like before mo mag for instance sa chapter 3, una gid inyo i-present dira is ang mga participants ninyo. Who are your participants? Then next is the categorization of your data. So unsa tong mga categories nga na-come up nagikan sa inyong analyst. The next is after ana is mga description or narration ninyo about atong result. Then discuss only significant values in the table and their meaning or interpretation. So mo ni siya, take note, this is for kuan. Okay. Next is, so take note, only significant values should be indicated or remain in the table. Then, considering na i-appeal po ninyo tong iyahang mga dito na ninyo kaon sa tool. Then, include discussions, interpretations, very understandable to an ordinary reader, since that is research. So, dili mo na ginaingon nga, dili na siya necessary no nga mura na siya feature writing nga maybe inyong expectation basta research panindotay na siya og kuano daghan na kay mga flowering words. No, as much as possible consider your kanang reader, and it should be understandable for them. Then the summary, also have the summary, conclusion, and recommendation. So nani siya na bilong appeal part na pod siya sa chapter 3 nga inyong kuan. And this will be discussed by Ma'am Yodo. So then summary, for the summary, service with the research question, include only mean, numeral value, and descriptive equivalent. So do not include description and interpretation. So you don't need to write description in your table. Then test of difference and relationship, include only significant values and decision on hypothesis. So the extent of students' need has a grand mean. So this is an example now. So with a descriptive equivalent of often. So you have here the parameter, natay parameter diri, and this is your result, no? Nga gihatag sa statistician. So let's just assume. Then you have to check it asa siya na belong sa descriptive equivalent. So kani siya dili ni siya mao iyang tool. This is just example. Ako lang siyang gi-add diri para you will makabalo mo, makadetect mo asa siya gikuha. So ang iyong descriptive equivalent na siya, given na siya dito sa naka-range ninyo sa inyong tool. Depende sa inyong tool ha, para ni sa quanti. Then the extent of learning environment has a grand mean of 4.20 with a descriptive equivalent of often. So that is how to interpret your table. Labi na inig-discuss na ninyo. No, i-present man ninyo siya sa table, kani, ang 4.2, then muna siya inyo nang i-expand. So on the test of relationship, so between three independent variables and psychosocial adjustment, the p-value of 0.00 is less than 0.5 level of significance. So as mentioned earlier, no, sa ang level of significance, kung 0.5 ang ang description niya or interpretation is the null hypothesis was rejected. So anyway, ato lang ni siyang i-digdan deeper. Mas nindot dutong sa pala tong ipakita para ma-figure out ninyo kung unsa tong kuan place niya. So summary and findings. So vis-a-vis with the summary of findings, use the description that you are used in chapter 2. Then you have to give those interpretation. Then also include na ninyo dito ang meaning, no, or accepted ba siya or rejected based sa result na na-come up. Okay, students' needs are perceived by the students. A conducive learning environment is evident in most occasions. So, teaching practices, students' needs, and learning environment have significant relationship. The adjustment science, teaching rule, and okay. So now I have here, muna siya ang format, no, for the action research for qualitative. This how it looks like, no. Sa figure 2 na ni siya, pero napat mo ni siya pag magbutang mo figure, butang niyo sa baba ang data. Then this is how it looks like. So mga reflections, findings sa inyong research, mga stand. Then you may integrate, so diri nga part it includes your reflection, no? Mag-reflect na mo sa inyong based sa results sa study na gather. So integrate your personal reflection as researchers on the findings that you have discussed. Then after ana is you have to butang po you have to include also the findings coincide with the study of something like for example Dikito 2012 that so yung statement. Then unsa ditong related no katong related niya nga study. So diri ay ipang present na dahil ninyo for instance IDI sa individual nga nag-interview ninyo, present respondent 1, 2, then dapat kani siya nga statement related sa imuhang present diri Okay? Sa first nga question nimo sa first category. Okay, mo naman ni siya ang inyong mga supporting themes, no? So, then, continuing this further, the study of, ano po, i-present na po ninyo, based niya siya sa inyong RRL. Entitled, inyong i-present, then, supported the findings of this present study. So, unsa man ang gi-emphasize. Then, indeed, so, supporting statement na po sa inyong gi-interview. Then, katong same niya og statement as to support. Then last is the educational implication of the findings. So include ninyo dira. So we have here the exam for in case nagwonder no how it should be presented. So this was the format natong gina-follow. This is a study of the group of Ampon. So they have the title of Triads of Demand, Macro Leadership Practices of Elementary Teacher Addressing the Disruptive Behavior of the Learners. So 2020 ni siya nga study. So recent lang. So this should your study looks like if qualitative. Chapter 3. Itong ikuan sa pinaka-primero. Okay. So this would be your results and discussion for qualitative. So this chapter presents participants' experiences relating to coping mechanism and insights about implemented practices in school towards disruptive behavior. So katong sa topic ninyo, what is it all about? Inyong objective. Then disruptive behaviors of learners, which include conclusion based on the information collected through in-depth interview. So since naman mo sa qualitative, you have IDI and FGD. So focus group discussion, then individual interview. So need gihapon, you have to, though as what I've mentioned earlier, no need na ninyo nga ibutang ang name gyud sa participant when maghatag na mo sa inyong or mag-craft na mo sa inyong results and discussion. But still, you can give informations, no? Such as mga key informants, pila ka buok. So nanan ni siya sa base sa inyo sa mga chapter 1, chapter 2 ninyo, methodology katong sa participants, who will be your participants. kuhaan ninyo sa inyong data. So, in this study, there was 5 teachers and 5 parents. And from Labunturan Central Elementary School with no age limitation. So, you have to describe unsa tong mga criteria of selection. Unsa tong pwede lang kay like the level of learners. So, ang criteria ilang gikan diri is grade 4 pero with no age limitation. So, you have to describe ang inyong mga key informants. So, mga description. So, unsa man ang na-notice, common problem. Then, presentation. How are the participants under in-depth interview? So, profiling. So, who are the participants? They have the guidance counselor, teachers, and parents. Then, one is siya, as what I have mentioned, you have to include codes or pseudonym to hide their identity. Then, gender, age, length of service. So, one is siya. So, one is siya sa presentation sa inyong mga participant. Mo ginay pinakauna nga makita. So, profiling. Description, if needed, no? Then, I needed nga i-describe, pero, needed ninyo i-describe, pero pwede po ninyo siya, gani ang per code, na i-mention ninyo yung background. So, after presenting the participants, next is categorization of data. So, in this area, in this part, this is the result that was given from your analyst. Like presenting, so the themes were given that emerge within a given category. So, mo ni siya inyong category such as experiences of the participants, disruptive behavior, and you have the theme. Okay, you have to give a short description about the experiences encountered by the participants. So, just give a background, no? Then, you have here, so the experiences of participants in disruptive behavior for learners, mo ni siya ang category. Then, with the emerging theme of danger, bullying, verbal and physical students, monkey, business, then beware of the bully, uncontrolled clamor, call for a fist fight. So, for the parents, enslaved to gadgets, lack of time and attention. So, these themes, kani siya nga themes, nabuo ni siya gikan sa mga statement from your participant. So, when giving the, since you have to present the theme, you have provide a supporting statement in your table. No, ibutang na niyo siya. So, remember, first table, it would be profiling sa inyong mga participants. Next is katong sa first question ninyo, main question nga nakahatag og na first category man siya, second table. Ang first category mo dapat makita diri. So, ay makita ninyo ang ilahang mga statements diri. So, another theme na pod for the category 1, which is the experiences. Then, presentation. Mo na siya, giingon ganina nga, you have to give a reflection based sa result, no? I-present ninyo siya. This how it looks like. So, bullying, then with supporting statement, mga ki-business. So, mo ni siya itong makita sa table. Then, ang kaning diri mo ni siya itong mga result magikan sa inyong gipangkuha nga data. No? If namoy makita, ihatag man na sa inyong mga analyst or sa inyong analyst, no? Take note on those statement nga related, no? Parallel sila. Connected.
Ma'am Lois, excuse me.
Yes?
Wala nakita tong sample nga research. Nagyapon sa PPT.
I see. Okay. Okay ka ne? Okay na?
Oo, okay na.
Okay. So, mo ni siya. So, results and discussion. Profile of the participants. Okay. Ano siya kung gingon ganina. So, i-present ninyo ang inyong mga participants, pila ka buok, inyong IDI and FGD. Okay, they are from Nabunturan Central Elementary School. Then, first table. So, description of your table. So, muna siya ang name sa inyong table. The key, the in-depth interview IDI participant profile. So, table 1 shows you have to present a brief description that would describe your table. So, table 1 shows the key profile of 3 participants in in-depth interview, namely the guidance counselor, teachers, and parents and their students to protect their identity. So, makita siya, no? Participants, pseudonym, gender, age, then length of service. Kani siya, mo ni siya ang mga participants. Then, sa teacher, background profiling. Pseudonym, then yung background. So, nanana siya dito sa inyong part na niya sa inyong tool nga ihatag sa ilaha nga pansiran ninyo like age, gender, name, age, gender, ilang occupation, nana siya dito. Then, you may present it here but be sure to hide their identity, no? Use pseudonym. Then, we have here the characterization of data. So, this was emerged based on, the category was emerged based on your research question. So, for your first main question, you have the experiences encountered by the participants. So, mo ni siya. No, you have to present, no, what is it all about in this section. Sure, a brief narration or description. So this section presents the experiences of participants with regards to disruptive behavior of the handed learners at Nabunturan Elementary School. Qualitative study. Then, sa table 2, after presenting the profile of your participants, then uh, you have here the name of your table, experiences of the participants on disruptive behavior of the learners. So, man siya na inyong category. First category, then with the theme, manay ang theme, with their supporting statements. This would suffice your first question, no, main question. Kani siya mo na siya inyong theme given by your analyst. Same with here. Then your reflection, butang ninyo statement. Mga supporting statements from your participants. Then kani siya study, you will relate it to your study ng mga related literature. Then i-add ninyo diri to give weight, no, dili lang siya kanang interconnected siya sa inyong existing study karon. Beware of bully theme. So ingana lang na siya pagka-present. Same, so ang first category, second category, ingana lang gyapon ang iyang kuan makitaan. So you have to include the narration, inyong reflection, and also the mga supporting statement from your RRL. Nga dapat pun makita sa inyong RRL, okay? So dapat pud no dili dapat magbutang diri og kanang layo ra gud kaayo, no? Kay mo man ni atong basis nga katuuhan ang imong study. So lack of time and attention. So mga theme na siya. So next is a coping mechanism, same lang gyapon. You have to present your table. Then, ang name sa table, participants, who were the participants, theme, and supporting statements. So, mo lang na siya until sa inyong third nga category, which is ang insights. Okay. So, this is the format that you should have to follow for qualitative. So, we will proceed to quantitative. Okay, for quantitative, this is the study of John Benzel Alvarez. Their study is all about John Benzel Alvarez, Nelvin Banlasan's group. Okay, this is bilingual instruction and its effect in the macro skills of public elementary school learners. So this was on June 2020. So si Sir More ilahang kuan advisor. And this study, to add no, this study was awarded sa school, even sa, if wala ko nang mali, no, this was awarded in the research, sa research, no, sa Compostela, na-recognize ang ilang study as best paper. Okay, for the chapter 3, results and discussion. So you have to give a description. So what is this all about? So in this chapter, the researchers presented the data analysis and interpretations of findings. Discussion of topic were arranged in the following headings: the extent of bilingual instruction. So kato na ni siyang gikan sa inyong mga research question, no? By category ka na table katong gi-present nato ganina. Then the level of macro skills, ano siyang category. The relationship between the extent of bilingual instruction and the significant prediction of linguistic awareness and flexibility of the macro skills. So first table, the extent of bilingual instruction. So gi-present nila diri So muna siya ang since they are looking on, so muna siya ilanggit ko ang central tendency. So we have the mean score. So ang bilingual instruction gi-compute na ni siya. So this will be given by your statistician. And you have to identify na lang ang inyong description. Kani siya, mo ni siya ang makita ninyo sa inyong tool. Okay? Mo na siya makita ninyo sa inyong tool. The result will be given. Kaning numerical result will be given by your statistician. Then, what you're going to do now is you have to discuss the result, no? So, for example, table 1 shows the extent of bilingual instruction of grade 4 learners of public elementary schools in terms of linguistic awareness and linguistic flexibility. It is reflected that the mean score, in linguistic awareness is 3.16 with a descriptive equivalent of often. Then this means that the significance of bilingual instruction of macro skills of grateful learners in the public elementary schools in terms of linguistic awareness is observed in most occasions. So, nasa dere, it is, so muna siyang description. So, this is how you interpret your table. So, after presenting your table, you have to give your interpretation. Then, dapat na may supporting, like, so gikan mga statements from other related studies. Present ninyo. Then, another support. This is supported by ang result. So, muna siya. So, again, another, same lang yapon ang process. You will present the table, describe the table based on your research question, then present the category. Then, unsa ni siya? Macro skills, level of macro skills, grateful learners. So, when presenting the table with description, we have here the macro skills: reading, listening, speaking, writing, then with a mean score, with a given mean score, then level, then description. So, what you're going to do here is, imuha na siyang imuha ni siyang present, no? This, you have to interpret this table based on their description, and after an interpretation, then supporting statements. So, ano lang siya. So same process lang gyapon siya sa table 3. So ang ana lang na siya ang full duration, then ang ninyo ang per table, description, interpretation with supporting statements. Okay. I guess I am done. So this is how should your study being discussed na ma-present siya sa inyo ang research. This should be your research paper being presented. So this is your sample guide. So that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now for the fourth chapter of the I'm sorry. Now for the fourth chapter of the action research proper, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Stephanie Apple and Piodo LPT.
Thank you so much, Miss Villaflor. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So this is the last chapter,
Good afternoon,
and
ma'am.
this chapter is a very short lang gud kayo siya nga discussion. Since ang chapter 4 pod, which talks about the summary and conclusions, including recommendations, gamay ra gid kaayo pod siya. I will also present the last chapter, which is the chapter 4 sa katong sample nga research from the graduate students na sa CVSC. So ipadayon ako tong sample gihatag ni Ma'am Lois kanina. So let me present my screen. Okay, so again, I will be presenting chapter 4. So, there are parts in the chapter 4 for qualitative research, or yes, qualitative research, no? Parts for the chapter 4 are the following: implications for practice, implications for future research, concluding remarks, and the action plan. So that is for qualitative research. Implications for practice. Unsa ang mabutang sa implications for practice? Significance of the findings to the practice of concerned individuals, no? So unsaon um I mean unsa ang gamit sa findings or sa results nga nasa chapter 3, no, sa results and discussion. So nakita na nato ang results sa study karon unsa ang gamit ato sa mga concerned individuals. The results of the findings to the practice of concerned individuals. How will the study become useful, no, to them, to the individuals or respondents? So, mao na siya sa implications for practice. You may also specify the implications and give proofs based on the result of your study. So, para mahatagan siya og supporting detail or proof, so pwede ka magkuha sa result sa imuhang study. And then, policies or regulations that might be influenced because of your study. So, pwede po dira ibutang sa implications for practice ang possible policies or regulations that can be changed because of the influence sa result sa imuhang studies. Sa imong study. Next part for this chapter, is implications for future study. So kung sa implications for practice, how will the findings or the result of your study be helpful, or what is the use of the findings of your study sa concerned individuals, practice of concerned individuals? Sa implications for future study, unsa ang gamit or how it will affect the unsa man ang mga future researches nga kanang kanang same or yes, with the same interest in your study nga gibuhat nimo. So it shows how your study would help and impact future researchers or relevant field of interest in your study. So unsaon paggamit sa imong research, mahimo bang useful in the future researches nga buhaton? Pwede ba mahimong reference ang imuhang study sa future nga mga researches? So it's impact and help basically to the future researches. Next part for this chapter is the concluding remarks. So this is the closing thoughts on the key concepts covered in the preceding chapters. So closing thoughts, no? And it would also discuss the summary of the main findings. It also concludes the thesis or your study. So dira na nimo ibutang ang um, overall nga findings or result, the summary in general of your research. And then the action plan presents the sequence of steps that must be taken or activities that must be performed for a strategy to be achieved. So an action plan is a detailed plan outlining actions needed to reach one or more goals. And alternatively, it can be defined as a sequence of steps that must be taken or activities that must be performed well for a strategy to succeed. So based sa findings, based sa results sa imuhang gibuhat nga study, so kung naay pa need nga i-enhance, no, and mabuhat sa imuhang respondents and concerned individuals, kay kuan man siya, action research man so sa school if naay problem nga need to be solved, no, for example sa students, for example nga study sa behaviors of students, so kung naay need nga ma-change, ma-improve ana based sa results sa imong study, so mauna ang buhatan nimo og action plan. So what is an example of action plan? So since sa qualitative nga research man ni siya, mao ni ang action plan based sa katong study sa graduate na nga students sa CVSC, no? Triads of demand, macro leadership practices of elementary teacher, addressing the disruptive behavior of learners. So, this is the sample action plan. And the action plan, by the way, it consists of um, kaning action, persons responsible, evidences of implementation, timeline, and the results. These 5 kabuok mo ni sila ang basic part sa action plan. So, kaning 5 should be present sa action plan. So, example, first action or activity that should be undertaken according sa mga researchers, no, orientation on the school practices, rules, and regulation. So, to address the issue or the problem concerned, dapat daw ang school should have an orientation about their practices, their rules, and regulations. So, persons responsible to conduct the orientation are the school heads, the parents should be present as well, teachers, and the students. And then evidences of implementation, so event orientation, it could also be for me, documentations of the orientation nga gibuhat. So for the evidences. And then timeline, whole school year. So I also nakakita po ko og kanang timeline nga kanang specific na ibutang dira ay if orientation will only last for 4 days. So nakita na ko ganiha ang study nila gigare na sila seminar for example ilisda na to ning orientation og seminar. So ang ibutang nila sa timeline is how long i-conduct ang seminar. So butang nimo dira sa timeline for example 3 days seminar, so 3 days ang ibutang dira. And then for the results of this activity or this action, it increased parents' involvement and responsibility to children's activity in school as well as maintain awareness. So basically, there is a result unsa lang imuhang desired outcome ani nga action once undertaken. So another activity for their action plan, constant monitoring on children's performance, including their behavior. And the persons responsible to monitor the children's performance are the parents and teachers. And then evidences of implementation, checklist for performance level, skills, and behavior. So same timeline no kung kanus-a siya i-conduct, dere pwede mo mag-specify nga kanus-a sila mag-conduct og monitoring since monitoring man. So pwede na to ibutang dere quarterly no sa whole school year. Pwede po dira ibutang. Results, learners will be encouraged to do well in school and academically, and at the same time function learners' sense of responsibility. So this is the desired result for their for this activity on their action plan. Lastly, teachers assistant for learners follow-up discipline. So persons responsible, teachers and students. Documentation for teachers assistant. So evidences, timeline and the result improvement towards learners' interest and attention, prevent distraction during teachers' teaching and learning. So that is for the qualitative research. For quantitative research, lahi ang parts niya sa chapter 4. The parts are summary, summary of findings, conclusions, and recommendations, as well as action plan. So summary of findings. In summary of findings, this provide a discussion for each of the findings using anchor verbiage that justifies the intent of the findings. No, summary of the findings. This summarizes ang results nga na mabutang nato sa chapter 3. Do not worry, I will show to you examples katong mention ako. A while ago on katong gipakita ni Ma'am Lois. And then another component of the summary of the findings is to compare or link the findings to the studies outlined in RRL. Are they the same or new? So pwede po na to ibutang sa summary of findings if ang results no nga based sa study nimo kay the same ba to prove nga if the same ba sa imuhang mga theories or I mean sa studies nga nabutang nimo sa imuhang RRL. So if you're pwede po mo magbasa katong gisend sa GC no sa seso nga GC katong reminders in organizing your ideas for chapter 4. It will also give you ideas on how to write your chapter 4 and this summary of findings. Conclusions. This will be based on the results or findings of your study. So, summary of findings, imuha lang i-summarize ang because sa results and sa results and discussion, so taas man kato siya lengthy. Diri as a summary of findings, ang summarizations lang gyud sa findings, sa results sa imuhang study. Well, sa conclusion, you will again, you will give concluding statements, no, that will answer the hypothesis or assumptions nga buhat nimo prior conducting the research and prior to getting the results of your study. So, ma-answer sa conclusion ang hypothesis and your assumptions. So, sa conclusion as well, you may state if there are significant relationship between the variables of your study. So, later, makita nato sa how they presented kung unsa nila pag craft ang ilahang conclusion. Next is the recommendation. So, kung sa qualitative research na ata implications for practice and implications for future research, sa quantitative research na atay recommendations. So, recommendations are specific actions to be taken with regards to policy, practice, theory, or subsequent research. So, take note, specific actions siya, no? They are specific suggestions as well. So, recommendations or suggestions that you make with regard to future research on the topic. So, you may also identify gaps in the literature that should be addressed if ever na ay mag-research in the future researches nga buhaton sa uban, no? So, pareha sa gingon ni Sir Pedro ganina, if you are going to think of a topic for your research, pwede mo mag-add to or magbasa sa uban nga mga researches, go to recommendation part para makita ninyo kung unsa ang wala na address sa ilahang research. So sa recommendation ginabutang kung unsa ang mga identified gaps sa research, no? So that ma-address siya sa sunod nga mga tao nga mag-research with siguro nga mag-anchor to the same topic that you are nga inyong research. So, mabutang na siya dara sa recommendation, specific suggestions. Butang po diri sa recommendations, what are recommendations that you can give for the students, no? The students, especially kung students ang mga respondents, unsa ang ma-recommend ninyo sa students? Mag-base lang gyapon mo sa findings na sa inyong study. And then what recommendations can you give to the parents? Unsa siguro ang ilang ang ilahang buhaton nga mga actions para at for the improvement of their students or their children. And then what recommendations can you give for the teachers? What recommendations can you give for the principals and administrators of the school? And lastly, for the curriculum developers, agency heads, and officials or policy makers. So, based sa findings sa inyong research, makita kung makita ang mga gaps, makita ang need nga i-work out, no? So, sa ani nga mga concerned individuals, students, parents, teachers, principals, administrators, curriculum developers, including policy makers. So sa gi-mention ako ganina, it will affect certain policies, no, kung dapat ba sila mahimong basihan ang imong research for policy makers, kung dapat ba sila na i-amend sa policy, maybe principals and administrators of the school, na ba sila makuha sa imong research for the betterment of the schools. So you can write the recommendations in there. And lastly is the action plan. So dira na pod ang sample action plan sa nag-research o sa quantitative research. So ako na lang ipakita ang diretsyo ang katong sample nga research. So first, let's go with qualitative research. So dira ang chapter 4. Again, implications and conclusion. So this chapter presents the conclusion, implications for practice, and implications for future research on the variety of behavioral problems of learners. So before presenting the implication for practice, implication for future research, concluding remarks, and the action plan, you need to welcome as well the readers no sa anang nga chapter. What they will be able to learn and to read on that chapter sa chapter 4. So, mao ni ilang opening statement. So they presented the implications for practice diri So nagbutang pod sila og mga references no, from other studies. Kung makita ninyo diri. So diri sa first paragraph nila, they so tawag ni focus on the parents involvement. So parents practice involvement sa ilahang students. So mo ni ang sample. So for implication for future research. So the findings that behavioral problems appear to more negatively affect to individual learners' academic performance. Future research on the experiences, coping mechanism, and the insights of parents, teachers, and the guidance coordinator in implementing practices to address the disruptive behavior of learners may be advantageous when the study investigates whether all children with behavioral problems should be provided with additional physical and mental activities. So makita nato diri ang unsa ang ilang gisuggest for the future researchers, no? About sa ilahang topic or sa same problem kung naay mag-research na in the future. So, nadari future research should continue to investigate the effect of behavioral problems toward academic performance of learners. And then their concluding remarks. So the findings of the research reveal that the main reason of being disruptive learner is the basic foundation, frustration, support, attention, and guidance from the family and other environment. They also cited references pod. So lastly, kita na to diri ang ilahang action plan. So mao ni akong gi-present ka action plan ganina. This section presents the steps that must be taken to be applied that might reduce or else prevent the number of disruptive learners. So do not directly give or present the table sa inyong action plan. You should also present it nga kanang i-describe pod nimo, no? Describe pod nimo. So mo na akong gi-present gani. Actually tulo lang to ka actions. So daghan pa sila gi butang diri 5 ka activities for their action plan. So that is for qualitative research. For quantitative research, mao ni ang sulod sa ilahang chapter 4, summary of findings, conclusion, and recommendation. So this chapter presents the summary of findings, conclusions, and the recommendations based on the results of this study. So summary of findings, they prefer to write the summary of their findings. Naka-ano siya, sa may tawag naka-numbering, no? Ang ilahang summary of findings. So as you notice, gikan ang data, gikan gid ni sa ilahang results and discussion sa chapter 3 nga part, no? Pag-analyze sa ilahang data ang kaning diri agibutang. So that is for the summary of findings. For the conclusion, based on the findings of the study, the following conclusions are formulated. So sa conclusion nga part, wala na sila naghatag og kaning mga numerical data kay Sa summary of findings man jud na siya dapat mabutang. Sa conclusions, yes, sa conclusion, uh, katong giingon ako ganina, gipakita nila ang significance, or I mean significant relationship, if there's any significant relationship with their variables. So gibutang nila diri ah. And for their recommendations, after a thorough review of the findings and conclusions of the study, the following recommendations are given. So, na sila recommendation for the Department of Education, na sila recommendation for the school administration, also to the teachers, they also have recommendations to give. Also for the students. So, what are those um, specific suggestions nga ilahang mahatag, or specific actions to be taken by the concerned individuals of the study. So, recommendations nila. And lastly, their action plan to address the concerns nga nakita nila sa study. So this section presents the sequence of steps that must be taken or activities that must be performed. So again, the parts of action plan, or unsa ang dapat present sa action plan: actions, person responsible, evidences of implementation, the timeline, and the result. So as I have mentioned a while ago, mao ni ang sample sa timeline nga kanang specific, no? So, by the way, ang kaninga study is entitled Assessment on the Use of Bilingual Instruction in Conducting Class Discussion. So, first nga action to be undertaken is skills training or seminar for the use of bilingual instruction in conducting class discussion. So, nasalay skills training and seminar. So, responsible individuals is the division office, district supervisor, school principals, and teachers. Maybe since mag-invite sila og resource speaker for this training and seminar. And the nga concerned nga individuals ani, or ang dapat mo attend sa seminar to learn are the teachers, since ang pag-apply og bilingual instruction man eh. So evidences of implementation could be pictures, attendance, certificates, creation of policies relative to the provision of diverse materials. So timeline for the said training is 5 days. The intended result is the teacher would develop their skills and abilities in imparting the lessons using bilingual instruction. That is the intended outcome of the action. Second, monthly evaluation of teachers for the use of bilingual instruction in conducting discussion. Concerned or responsible persons, school principals, master teachers, and the teachers. So we have here the evidences and the timeline, also the results, intended result. Teachers may develop specific bilingual instruction as medium of communication to sustain the students' interest in learning and developing their macro skills, and teacher may explore more teaching innovations to make teaching learning process more interesting and relevant to students. Lastly, for their action plan, last action to be undertaken is a study that to study the results of the monthly evaluation. Persons responsible, division office, and the district supervisors. Evidences of implementation, evaluation ratings of the teachers, statistical data result, and it should be conducted once a month. The desired result of this is that the Department of Education can ensure that the teachers will use bilingual instruction in conducting class discussion, and by improving the macro skills of the students. So that's the sample action plan of quantitative research. So I think that's all for my part for chapter 4. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now for our last speaker, focusing on action research proper, particularly in referencing, in-text citation, and appendices. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Janet R. Oyangarin, LPT.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I see
Good
here.
afternoon,
Good
ma'am.
afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Very good. Linaw pa dyan sila. Okay, so the topic that I'll be discussing this afternoon. But before that, let me present my PowerPoint muna. Okay na ba? Makita? Can you see my screen?
Wala, ma'am. Okay na, ma'am.
Can you
Okay na, ma'am.
wala pa? Ano na po ni? Dahil lang ha. Ah, this, ah, wait sa ha.